Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to DePaul University's fifth Summer Career Chats. Today, I'm joined with Ross A Hersemann, the founder of Loading Law. Ross, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Alex. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. So the way this is going to work, we're just going to ask you a few questions just based on your experience with gaming, esports. I think it'll be especially interesting with your experience founding Loading Law and everything. Yeah, I'm very excited to get into it.
Great, happy to.
Awesome. And just a reminder for everyone watching out there, be it on Twitch or be it on Facebook, you can go ahead and just leave a comment for me or Ross, questions, concerns, anything, and we will try to address it. So yeah, feel free to leave comments. So Ross, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the gaming and esports industry.
Happy to. So I'm an attorney by trade. I founded Loading Law fresh out of law school because I really wanted to work with game developers, esports players, and folks working in like the tech and entertainment fields. So Loading Law caters to all of their needs, whether it's their contract issues, their intellectual property, their trademarks or copyrights, as well as privacy and data issues. So I think I got into the field because I was a lifelong gamer growing up, loved Sonic the Hedgehog, and was also very interested in politics and freedom of speech issues. So when I found myself in law school and was trying to decide on some kind of specialty, some kind of focus for my practice after I got out of law school, I got really interested in cyber law issues, privacy, and ultimately video games. I found out that there weren't a lot of attorneys or legal minds really knowledgeable about this space or protecting the interests of esports players at that time. So I just started expanding my knowledge base, and now 5 years later, am representing some amazing esports players and video game companies, making some very cool art and some waves in the scene.
That's awesome, and that's definitely something that needs to be represented. I completely agree with you there. So I know you said you were interested in video games as a kid. Was there like a time that video games got big enough that you started thinking, well, I could really like start making a career from this and kind of stray from like the very traditional law approach?
Sure. I think the earliest instance of my getting that kind of vibe was, I remember, and this is going back a long time and I was very young when it happened, but I remember watching Senate hearings about video game rating systems back in 1994. Some of them were televised on C-SPAN, and I remember seeing politicians talking about the video games that I knew and that I was playing that I loved, but not talking about them very intelligently. Is something I was picking up on already as a young kid, that they hadn't played these games, they didn't know what they were about, and that they seemed very foreign to them. And it kind of scared me as a kid, thinking, oh geez, these are the people that are going to be controlling the movies I watch and the games I play and everything else. Yeah. So I really thought this is something that is gaining enough attention to have leaders in government talking about it, but something that clearly needed more interest, and obviously that hasn't really changed. Going on almost 30 years later, I still feel there are a lot of people in influential positions who don't understand this content, don't know how it works, why people play, and these are the people making decisions. So the more people we can get who are knowledgeable and informed about this out there, kind of being a positive influence in the scene, the better.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think there's a lot of people that are, especially like just older demographics, that have trouble understanding, which is understandable. But I think it's awesome to see like that being represented within your firm and everything.
Mm-hmm. And it's something that I hope that it's changing, but there's always a backslide, and it's a very political or politicized issue. But it was only several years ago a judge in California said that video games contain about as much free expression or as much free speech as your average greeting card, and that's an intelligent perspective coming from a very educated person, but someone who clearly doesn't have enough experience with games that are so narratively driven, that have so much story and heart and art in them. It's just something that I think is really going to be changing in the next couple of years.
No, I agree completely. I remember when I was like a child, my parents were like, "Oh, you're going to grow out of video games," and clearly, I don't think that will happen in my whole life. So I think. I think eventually everyone's going to be playing games, old, young, everyone.
Mm-hmm. And that's a valid kind of perspective, but it's the kind of thing where when you say, you're going to grow out of video games, it's like telling someone you're going to grow out of books or you're going to grow out of movies. It really is a parallel kind of art form.
No, I agree completely. Awesome. So kind of going back to kind of your origins, did your education experiences help you kind of go into this career path, specifically with esports? Was there anything in like law school that could have directed you this way at all?
In some roundabout ways. The interesting thing about law school is it doesn't necessarily prepare you for a particular industry. There's sometimes a vibe where lawyers try and shoehorn an industry into existing laws that we have, and then sometimes an industry will spawn its own laws. So, contract law, free speech, constitutional law, these things all touch and affect and concern the video game industry, but per se, there's not video game law. Things like privacy law or IT law can all touch and concern video games, but people don't sit down and write laws just for video games, or at least anytime that they have, it's usually been disastrous. So in terms of what kind of education that I have that prepared me for this, things like my contracts classes, my sports law classes, were definitely helpful. Business incorporation for representing my clients who need business help. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until my second year of law school that I actually got a chance to take an elective in video game law, which was a crash course in all of these issues I've kind of touched on, but applied specifically to video games. I was always very surprised that despite how brilliant some of my professors were, how little experience they had with these new developing technologies. A lot of the laws and concepts I was learning about IT law were taken from the 1990s and were applying to cable TV networks or phone communications. Cell phones and the internet were kind of this scary boogeyman on the horizon as far as lawyers were concerned. So I think what was most beneficial at the time, because I wasn't fortunate enough for the field to kind of have a bedrock of academic instruction, was just literally reaching out to people in the industry itself and learning from them directly, because it was just a quick way to tap into the source of that knowledge. So for my part, as an aspiring attorney reaching out to other attorneys, I was calling the general counsels of places like Warner Brothers and Disney, or big studios like EA and Ubisoft, and asking them, you're a lawyer, you maybe had a background in privacy law or entertainment law, you've done a lot of work with film or art or music. How did you apply what you learned there to video games? And what is that going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years, 30 years from now? And ultimately, that was something that encouraged me to create a symposium all about video game law called the Chicago Video Game Law Summit. And for anyone listening who's more interested in law than esports particularly, it's a whole day of academic panels just for video game law topics. And we do touch on esports, but it's a very broad spectrum of knowledge.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. It's really cool to see that. I think that's awesome overall. And when you entered the industry, was there anything that really surprised you? I mean, I know you said obviously law doesn't teach you for one specific criteria. So was there anything that completely threw you off guard?
I think what surprised me, as I came to know professional esports players, people who were aspiring greats, what surprised me was how many parallels you could draw from how much esports have in common with traditional sports. The sports that your dad or grandfather would know about, how much, League of Legends had in common with football, and how much being an esports athlete is similar to being a quote unquote traditional athlete. The kids who are playing basketball, on a half court, who want to be Michael Jordan or LeBron James someday, that's the same kind of aspiration that you get for kids who want to play Halo or League of Legends or Fortnite professionally. And it's just as difficult too. There's only so many spots to be at that expert, God tier level of professionalism. So it takes just as much hard work, it takes just as much preparation, and just as much luck to really kind of make it in esports as it is any other sport.
No, I agree completely with that. I mean, I've played semi-competitively Rocket League, and I mean, who hasn't fantasized about being up on stage, and it's a completely very similar thing. How do you think moving forward, when we enter COVID-19, how do you think that will affect the industry as a whole?
Sure, it's changed things so much. I mean, when it kind of hit back in February, March, the way it impacted my practice and my life first was just conventions started getting canceled left, right, and center. So first GDC was posted. I think San Diego Comic-Con was it was South by Southwest. South by Southwest was kind of the last convention that was still had. Here in Chicago, we had C2E2, but GDC got postponed, and then ultimately completely changed formats. E3 got canceled. So for gaming, what that meant was, because there weren't conventions, that meant that indies didn't have a chance to showcase their games at big AAA conventions like E3. It meant that we didn't get game announcements there. There was always Nintendo Direct, but both Microsoft and Sony have had their kind of private showcases for marketing their new games. And then on the esports front, as much as we're all virtually connected and can play games from home and kind of life marches on, that lack of in-person conventions meant that esports players had to completely change the way that they handled their endorsements this year, their travel plans, where they were traveling to, if tournaments were held in person. how they're monetizing, because so often you're selling tickets for in-person seats. It's a complete game changer, and I think it's really no pun intended. But I think it's going to be kind of a new reality for esports, that it's going to be yet still even more virtual than it's ever been before, because those in-person conventions we're so used to might not have a place in the next year or two.
No, I agree completely. And I know you are right. Like, we are blessed in the sense that we can still play these games. So one thing I noticed is kind of the international competitions have kind of declined just because you can't play because of latency. So there could be like a North American tournament, but it's unfair to compete with Europe or something like that. Just because one person would have the advantage. So
Absolutely.
And so how do you kind of, like, stemming from that, where do you see esports kind of going, 5 years from now? And that could be related to COVID. That could be like separate from COVID. Do you think it will get like bigger and bigger?
So what I used to say before COVID, in the before times, was I think esports are just going to become normative. It's going to become a household name. It won't be special or distinguished in any way from any other sports. I think a practical way we might have seen that is you walk into your local sports bar, and instead of football, basketball, hockey being on TVs, 2 of those 5 TVs might be dedicated to League of Legends or Rocket League. And it's the kind of thing where your parents and grandparents might be sitting there at the bar watching it the same way that you would be, and just as interested. And I think that might be a culture shock for a lot of people, is seeing an older generation or a completely different demographic of folks who might never have been interested in video games or not known what they were, all of a sudden getting that familiar and watching it and spectating it, and it becoming the kind of pastime that the Super Bowl might be. 20 years from now, we might be seeing events on par with the Super Bowl in American culture that are completely focused around video games.
I hope so. That'd be so cool.
It could happen. We're on our way.
No, I agree with it. I think it would be awesome just to be able to watch esports in a bar. I mean, I know that's kind of emerging already, but when that becomes normalized, I mean, I just think it would be a lot of fun.
I think someday it's going to be completely unremarkable to other people. Right now, you can walk into a cyber cafe, or you can go to a gaming lounge, and all those esports are going to be there on TVs, and you're going to be surrounded by other gamers, and that's what everyone's going to be doing. But when you walk into a place that doesn't focus in esports specifically, just your average sports bar in Wrigleyville, and esports are on with the same play as your local sports team, and no one notices, cares, or speaks up about it, that's when you'll know, like, games have really arrived. Everybody knows they're here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And it looks like we just have one question, or not really a question, a comment from Courtney James. She said, free speech is an interesting component in video games. I'm curious if laws around gaming are geared towards protecting publishers or players more. Kind of curious how you take on that.
It's a great question. Ideally, it should be both the same. Free speech protection should kind of apply to both. The First Amendment, allows all of us to say what we will, but what controls it more than anything else actually is in the Constitution. It's contracts, because so much of esports is privatized, and that's going to be skewed in the favor of whoever has the most influence. So in some cases, it might be a league, it might be a publisher. They might be able to dictate the terms of saying players on our platform can only say this, they can only play these games, or they're not allowed to express political opinions. That might be a way that it happens. If there's an esports player who has a particular amount of juice or hustle, or is a really desirable person on a platform, they might be able to negotiate to say, no, I want to talk about international politics, or I want to be able to drop F-bombs, or whatever your particular flavor of free speech is. Whatever your negotiating power in the private sector, that's what's going to control. And it's one of the things that it's one of the more common questions I get lately, because a lot of my clients who are in the esports realm will often ask me, how do I get to say what I want to say? And sometimes it's not up to who we're negotiating with, it's up to the platform. So if you're on Twitch, if you were on Mixer, if you're competing internationally, it's not just American free speech, it's international speech and censorship and everything else. So ultimately the dollar kind of controls, and sometimes there aren't legal solutions to problems, there's business or finance solutions to problems.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for answering that. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Cool. So kind of, do you have any advice for DePaul students or anyone like looking to enter the gaming or esports industry? Not necessarily just related to law, but just in general.
Sure. I think like anything else, you have to take it really seriously and treat it like a job. It can't be a passing hobby, even though games are a wonderful thing to have as a hobby. If you want to be a professional gamer or an esports player, you really have to take that seriously and double down. So if you're a player, that means committing yourself to playing so many hours a day and playing against the best competition to really hone your skills. It means reaching out to other people in the industry, whether they're other professionals or academics or influencers of some kind, and trying to get the best information you can on sometimes it's just literally that pick your brain conversation of like, how can I be you? How can I do what you did or replicate your successes or avoid your failures? It's a great conversation to have that's very encouraging, and that kind of applies industry wide. So if you're a player, do that. But likewise, if you're interested in the business aspects, the marketing aspects, a lot of folks want to be esports agents. Some want to be video game lawyers. Some want to be marketers or influencers. The same advice kind of applies. Reach out to people doing the thing you want to do and ask them how they did it. That practical industry advice is really invaluable. And if you're trying to prepare yourself academically for that, kind of curate a body of knowledge and start taking classes and start focusing on majors that can make yourself the most marketable and the most appealing to any kind of employer. So things like communications or sports management, if you're interested in being an agent or interested in kind of the marketing business aspects, that's going to be an asset to you. If you want to really understand the nitty gritty of how games work and how they operate, computer science or game design could be a great asset to really honing your craft of being a better player. And if you want to be a lawyer, an accountant, a marketer, any degree in those fields will help prepare you. But I think the most invaluable thing you can do is just take it seriously, take it professionally, and commit yourself to a lot of hard work. This is a very sexy industry. A lot of people want to be part of it. A lot of people can make a lot of money at it, but you have to work hard. You have to be in the right place at the right time and just kind of have a skill set and luck to make it work. It doesn't happen for everybody, but the better you prepare and the harder you work, the better your chances.
Awesome. Definitely some great advice there. And one question I had kind of when we were on the topic of like student players, and like if we look at traditional sports, there's kind of like this process that they usually go through where it's like, they play in high school, they get recruited to a college, they play in college, and then maybe a very small percentage will go on to play professionally. Do you think down the line we could see something similar to that in esports, where kind of to get into these huge organizations, you start off and you like kind of build up through college level?
I think so. I think we're at the point now where, esports isn't new per se, but it depends what your definition of new is. People have been gaming competitively and professionally since as long as we've had video games, going back into the late 70s and early 80s. Now, that doesn't mean that we had professional leagues or players associations or unions or any of the things that we come to associate with professional sports. But the experience has definitely been there. And I think that you touch on a good point that maybe in time we will start to have kind of a recipe or a roadmap for if you want to be a professional player, this is what you do. And I think right now we've seen so many success stories come out of such unique circumstances that it could be completely different. Something that does excite me about esports that is a little bit different from traditional sports or physical sports that we see so often is really anyone can play. Right. If you have access to an internet connection, not everyone does, but we're going to see some amazing competitors come out of unconventional places. And I think because of that, there's not going to be a set roadmap. You can have a Cinderella boy, girl, or person coming out of any town, anywhere. If they just have the time and the drive, they can be the best if they really try. It's really going to be leveling the playing field for competitors from everywhere. So I think there might be folks who are on that traditional track where, like you said, they might get drafted out of high school, or, let's be fair, this is esports, so folks might get drafted out of middle school. We're seeing younger and younger players, and they actually have a competitive advantage over older players. So it'll be interesting to see.
No, I think that's a good point. That's something I didn't think about. I mean, if you had like a middle schooler against like a college student in football, that would not work. But with esports, I mean, it could be a very even field. So yeah, definitely a great point. And I just wanted to give everyone watching just another reminder. If you have any questions, comments from me or Ross, feel free to just leave a comment. We have a few more questions here. So yeah, if you have any comments, just try to get to them. And yeah, sounds good. Yeah, so one last thing I just wanted to kind of get into is just for you to tell us a little bit more about loading law. I would love to learn a little bit more about it.
Sure. So my clients come from a variety of different places. They all touch and concern video games in one way or another. So some of them are DePaul grads who had an amazing capstone project and wanted to make a run at making a game studio out of it. They decided they wanted to patent it and package it and slap it on a plastic lunchbox and put it out there. So some things that I might be helping them with would be setting up their business, formalizing their business entity, giving them an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp so that they can start doing business in Illinois. That's usually one of the requirements for entering marketplaces to sell your game. I might help them with trademarking their logo and protecting their brand. Often I'll be writing privacy policies for them, or terms of use or end user license agreements. If they're hiring people, firing people, lots of contracts. Paper makes the world go around even when it's e-ink. So often what I'll be providing them is just kind of my experience in just game development with a capital D. So how they can take their art, take their creative work, and make it visible and make it profitable.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like a really awesome place. I mean, I don't know if I have the need for it personally right now, but it's definitely like a very needed thing, I think, especially it's great. It's great to see you helping like recent grads with games and everything.
It's really fun, and developers come out of all kinds of places. So if you're a single solo indie dev, and you've got an amazing talent to put something together, or if you're a smaller mid-sized studio, chances are you're going to need a lawyer's help at some point, because I have yet to meet someone who has a skill set so diverse that they can handle making a game, making the code, making the art, making the music, and are also marketing geniuses and legal minds, and just can do everything that's affiliated with games. Video games are the most diverse art forms we have, implementing so many different skill sets, and sometimes you just need all the help you can get to make it work.
Awesome. And just one last question while we just maybe wait for like a few comments to come in. What is your personal favorite game, either to watch or to play? Or
what is my personal favorite game? I have to say my first love for video games was always Sonic the Hedgehog. I had a Sega Genesis when I was a kid, and that was definitely my point of entry for games in general. I think playing that really got me into games, and being surrounded by a lot of Nintendo fanboys as a kid really helped strengthen my convictions about defending something you like. Everyone that I knew when I was a kid really loved Mario the most, and I was the one Sonic fanboy hanging out. So I think that was really influential in my advocating for games and talking about games. So I think Sonic then, Sonic Mania now is fantastic, and I think currently I'm playing through Last of Us 2. So no spoilers, anyone in the chats, but I'm really enjoying that, and it's been a really good experience so far. Last of Us 2 is just one of those games that it's one of those poster child games that you show people and you're like, oh yeah, games are art. They're fantastic. People might be looking at Last of Us 2 as like the Citizen Kane of the video game movement.
Right. I need to touch into that series. I don't have a PlayStation, so I've kind of been out of it, but I've heard like nothing but good things.
It's a goodie. It's a good one. And then I think, well, I'm going to have to wait a little bit longer now. I was really looking forward to Halo Infinite, but they just announced that they're delaying that until probably 2021. So I'll have to stick with Master Chief Collection until then.
True. And hopefully those like 4 or 5 games can keep you busy till then.
I think I'll be fine. My Steam library is so backed up. I've got enough games to keep me busy for 5 more pandemics, though I hope, knock on wood, we only need the one.
I agree. Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more comments. I think we're good to wrap this up. Ross, thanks so much for answering these questions, and really appreciate you being here. And
it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. See you later.